Hey guys, tonight we begin somewhere quiet, dusty, golden, and humming with the soft rustle of woven bags and padded feet. You're deep in the desert, but not alone. All around you, canvas tents flutter lazily in the morning breeze, ropes creak as camels shift their weight, and bundles of silk, spices, and something chirping are being loaded into baskets with sleepy precision. You are a silk route merchant, or maybe just a companion on this journey, walking alongside traders who smell like old sandalwood, cracked leather, and oddly enough, a small cricket cage made of bamboo so fine it whistles when the wind passes. Inside, a single striped cricket, dozing after its own breakfast of watermelon rind and a drop of honey water. You probably won't survive this journey without at least 6 days of confusion, a very persuasive camel, and a lot of patience for tea that tastes like warm laundry water. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And don't forget to tell me where you're retuning in from and what time it is. I love hearing how far these sleepy stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge out from the caravan's edge, the sand soft under your boots, the horizon blurs in all directions, the sky pale with morning haze. Your companions don't speak much. This is the hour of packing, muttering to donkeys, and checking your saffron bundles by pinching them gently between cloth-gloved fingers. Each thread of saffron harvested by hand, dried over low coals, packed into tiny glass vials, or silk sachets, worth more than silver. And yet, nestled next to it in your bag are 3 cricket cages. One sings every evening, one only at dawn. The third hasn't made a sound since Bukhara, but you haven't given up on him yet. This might seem strange, but in the 10th to 14th centuries, crickets were more than companions. They were trade goods, fortune tellers, and sometimes even currency, at least in the pockets of those who valued their voices as lullabies. In a land of silence, no written contract could be sealed without a song, or so one trader claimed. He also claimed his best cricket once predicted a flood, but historians still argue whether he just didn't want to cross the river that day. You help load the final parcels onto the mule cart, saffron and waxed leather. Crickets in silk-wrapped bamboo climb atop a saddle that never quite agrees with your spine. The caravan begins to move. The wind is low, and soon all you hear are soft hooves, the occasional sneeze from a camel, and the quiet, rhythmic chirping from the tiny cage hanging at your side. Pause. The song begins to match your heartbeat. It always does. A few hours in, you break for tea. Not because anyone says it's time, but because cricket song slows, and that means the heat is rising. You unwrap a cloth bundle. Stale flatbread almonds, a tiny paper cone filled with, you guessed, it's saffron powder. You sprinkle it into the water before it boils. The smell is warm, earthy, almost metallic. One of your companions laughs softly and pulls his own cricket from his pocket. Mine stopped singing yesterday, he says. I think he misses the apricot merchant from Niche. You nod solemnly. They had good rind. Tea brews. The desert hums. Your cricket stirs. You lean back against a saddlebag and watch the shimmer of heat over the dunes. You wonder how many more valleys you'll cross before your saffron is exchanged for silk, for porcelain, or perhaps for another cricket, one that sings in a slightly different key. One that makes you feel, for reasons you can't explain, that you're almost home. You're back on the move. The sun now higher, the dunes brighter, and the saffron-scented tea, just a memory lingering on your tongue. The caravan stretches out like a sleepy centipede, winding along a trail that barely exists except in memory and camel hoof. The air is warm but not sharp, and the silence is thick enough that you can hear the sand grind beneath the cartwheels. That and the rhythmic pulse of crickets. Some sing softly from cages tucked under cloths, others, more confident, chirp from open slats tied to belts or hat brims. Yes, someone in your caravan wears a cricket like a badge, its cage suspended just above their ear. You've asked about this. Helps me think, they said, without further elaboration. This is a group of merchants, yes, but they are also poets, dreamers, and on occasion, enthusiastic bug whisperers. The road today bends toward a well-known resting point, a shaded grove fed by a slow spring, nestled between two rocky outcrops that look like ancient camels frozen mid. You've stopped here before. Everyone has. The stones are cool, the water clean, and the acoustics remarkable, which is exactly why crickets are always loud here. You reach the grove just past midday, dust in your boots, a smudge of saffron on your sleeve where a bundle tore. The tents go up quickly, nothing fancy, just canvas triangles and ropes tied to thick shrubs. But someone always sets out the cricket circle. What's that? It's a tradition here. The chirping match. Merchants take out their most tuneful cricket, place the cages in a loose circle in the shaded center, and let the performance begin. No judging, no prizes, just pride and curiosity, and perhaps a bit of barter at the end. If someone's cricket sings something truly unusual, you place your cage gently beside the others. Your cricket, let's call them button, chirps once, pauses, then emits a slow, descending trill that sounds a bit like a sigh in musical form. A few heads turn. Melancholy, someone murmurs. I like it. You smile. Historians still argue whether these matches had any official rules. Some claim merchants used scales and tone categories. Others believe it was entirely subjective. More than one medieval poem references the crickets of Kashgar as more famous than the city's musicians. As the afternoon lengthens, the grove fills with soft, echoing chirps. Some fast and sharp, others drawn out, almost like lullabies. A few crickets refuse to perform. One falls asleep in his cage, unimpressed by the attention. You lie back in the shade, hat tipped forward, and let the sounds wash over you. Cricket song, breeze, the occasional plink of water dropping from leaf to stone. Someone offers you candied saffron root. It's sweet and earthy. You accept it gratefully, let it dissolve on your tongue like memory. One trader, a silver-bearded man from the east, begins like he's afraid of scaring the insects. There once was a boy, he says, who bought a cricket and paid 2 threads of saffron and a copper button. Carried it all the way to his wedding in the mountains, played it under his tent every night. It chirped until he died. There's a long pause. Then someone asks, and what happened to the cricket? The man shrugs. Still chirping, I imagine. You consider that, you hope button outlives you too. As the sun begins to set, golden rays catching the flutter of tents and the lattice work of cages, traders gather up their crickets with care, whispering soft thanks or gentle jokes. You rewrap Button's cage in cloth, tuck him into your pack beside the last of your saffrons. You glance at the caravan people, stretching, camels shifting, someone humming a tune that might have come from the bugs. The day has turned itself inside out. What began as quiet and slow has become music and memory. Historians might never agree on the significance of singing insects in trade. But you know this. You've carried both spice and song, and both have value that cannot be measured by weight. Dawn arrives like a quiet footstep cool, air curling into the tent corners, a thin blade of light slicing through the flap, brushing across your cheek as if to whisper, time to wander again. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb your satchel. Button is still asleep inside his cage, antennae tucked, legs folded beneath him like a tiny monk in meditation. You leave him be. Outside, the grove is nearly silent save for a few muted yawns. The stretch of old canvas, and one deeply unimpressed camel sneezing on someone's boot. Breakfast is simple. Dried apricots, flatbread warmed over embers, and saffron tea brewed from the last golden threads in a pouch so soft it feels more dream than fabric. You sip slowly, the aroma floral, almost metallic. It settles in your chest like memory. Today's leg of the journey takes you up a rocky path, high into the hills where clouds skim the stone and the wind carries traces of rosemary, salt, and the far-off tingle of snow. It's not cold yet, but it's the kind of air that remembers cold. As you walk, the caravan breaks into small, drifting clusters, pairs and trios talking softly, pointing at shrubs or curious rock formations that look suspiciously like sleeping animals. You hang back a little, walking alone for a while. That's when you spot it. A man, older, hunched but graceful, sitting beneath a crooked tree with a basket of tiny lacquered cricket cages, each no bigger than a plum. He's not a merchant, not exactly, more a tuner. He looks up as you approach and smiles without showing teeth. "Yours sings low," he says, not as a question. You nod, pulling Button's cage from your satchel. The man reaches out gently, holds it to his ear, listens. Button obliges with a lazy chirp. The man chuckles. "He dreams of rain," he says. You blink. Does he? Or of wet leaves? Maybe both. Want him tuned? You hesitate. Button isn't an instrument. But the old man looks so confident, so impossibly calm. You nod. He reaches into a pouch, pulls out something shiny, a cricket tuning comb. Yes, that's a thing. In this case, a narrow strip of polished bone with 4 fine prongs, each etched with a different symbol. Wind, stone, tea. He strikes one prong gently on a stone and hums softly. Then he holds Button's cage up again. The cricket twitches, then chirps the air this time. Sharper, but still with that dreamy wobble at the end. Better, the man says, still himself, but clearer. You thank him with 2 dried figs and a joke about singing bugs being better tempered than camels. He replies, "Crickets, complain less. Also, don't spit." You rejoin the caravan with Button tucked safely beside your saffron pouch. You swear his next chirp sounds a bit more confident. As you climb higher, the path narrows. You pass terraced gardens, carved from the hills, where saffron crocuses bloom in faint lavender bursts, their filaments bright as fire. A farmer waves at the caravan. She's harvesting, carefully pinching the delicate red threads with cloth-wrapped fingers, laying them in shallow trays like treasures. You ask her, "How long do they bloom?" She shrugs. 10 days? Maybe 12? Then nothing for a year. You nod. Ephemeral. Just like a cricket song. Just like a perfect steep of tea. Just like the stretch of road behind you. Historians still debate whether saffron was ever truly traded for crickets. The records are vague. One dusty ledger from Herat lists Vogel insects 3 jars equal to half shekel. Saffron discounted. Some claim it was metaphor. But here, now, in this high mountain garden, where the air smells of dust and bloom, it doesn't matter. The value was real. Because you have seen someone sigh with joy at the sound of a single chirp. You have watched a merchant unwrap a cricket like a letter from home. You have watched saffron threads lift in steam like prayers from a quiet cup. Button chirps again, softly. The road turns. You follow. Some trades don't need receipts. The descent into the valley is slower than expected. Your boots sink slightly into soft dust, and the winding switchbacks encourage patience. Below, the valley unfurls like a rolled-out rug, green, gold, and humming faintly, as though the hills themselves have memorized a song. You pause at a ridge to let a mule pass, its cargo jingling with tiny bells, and yes, one cricket cage tied neatly to the saddle horn. The mule's owner is a young boy, no more than 10, with a scarf too large for his head and the confident posture of someone who has always known exactly how much a singing cricket is worth. Is he any good? You ask, nodding at the cage. He's terrible in the morning, the boy replies, but after lunch, he sings like he remembers being a river. You laugh. He shrugs and adds, Saffron won't tell you stories. Crickets do. Below, the caravan stretches into the outskirts of a bustling way station townstone walls. Faded banners, and the faint echo of merchants calling out their wares in half a dozen dialects. You follow the flow, weaving between carts and camels, past stalls of cinnamon bark, tin cooking pots, embroidered slippers, and of course cricket vendors. These stalls are different. They don't shout, they murmur. Here, sellers crouch behind bamboo racks, gently rotating cages to catch the sunlight, revealing the fine craftsmanship, polished gourd, lattice-stick lids, delicate inlays of turquoise or mother of pearl. Some cages are shaped like towers, others like little boats. One even has a miniature water wheel inside, spinning lazily next to a sleepy cricket who seems unimpressed by its mechanical companion. You stop at a stall where the sign reads, Chirpsmith and Sons, tuners, tamers, and listeners since the Tiger Comet year. The stall keeper bows and gestures to a tray, a dozen tiny cages, each containing a cricket in various states of activity. Some chirp constantly, like they've been saving up stories. Others remain still, antennae twitching like half-finished thoughts. A sign beside the tray reads, Saffron trades accepted. Singing only not for soup. You offer one of your finer sashes, velvet-lined, double-wrapped, stamped with the crest of a known valley. The stall keeper inspects it, sniffs, nods, then selects a cage for you. Inside, a dark, slender cricket with a single pale stripe. You lean in to listen. Chirp, pause, chirp, chirp, pause, chirp. You glance up. Is he shy? You ask. The stallkeeper considers, then says, he waits until he knows you're listening. That settles it. You trade the saffron, wrap the cage in your scarf, and tuck it into your satchel beside Button, who chirps once in mild offense at the arrival of a possible rival. You pat his cage gently. Still my favorite, you whisper. You spend the evening exploring the way station. There are no inns, only canvas-roofed tea shops, where patrons sit on faded rugs and sip from chipped cups. In one, an old woman plays a wind harp. In another, two crickets in neighboring cages sing to each other like they refinishing each other as you eat slow-roasted lentils with saffron oil, dip bread into sweet vinegar, and drink tea that smells of pine needles and sleep. Later, as the sky darkens to a velvet charcoal and the fires burn low, you lie back beneath the awning of your merchant's tent. Around you, other travelers murmur, stir, breathe, and the crickets sing. Their song is not uniform. It is not a choir. It is a slow drift of voices, some fast, some fading, some bright and thin, others low and warm. It is the sound of a caravan remembering its day. Historians still argue whether insects had cultural value on the Silk Route, whether the trade of chirping things was practical or poetic, whether the notes scribbled on bamboo tags beside each cage, prefers barley husks, sings best at dusk, once rode in a melon. But you, with two crickets nestled beside Saffron, with dust on your boots and song in your ears, know this. You've heard the road speak, and it sounds like home. Morning doesn't arrive so much as unfold. It begins with the sound of boiling water in a kettle that doesn't quite whistle. The low clink of ceramic lids, the stretch of canvas as someone adjusts a tent flap. Then, slowly, the rest, a handful of drowsy birds, the faint grind of a millstone, and somewhere nearby inevitably a cricket beginning its warm-up routine. You sit up slowly beneath your layered blanket, your shoulders slightly sore from having slept with your satchel cradled like a pillow. Button's cage is still beside you, his wings silent but his legs twitching in anticipation. The new cricketer Saffron trade acquisition remains, still in his newer, shinier cage. No sound yet, just potential. You unpack both and place them side by side. No reaction. Then you unwrap your breakfast. Dry flatbread, a sliver of aged cheese, and a single thread of saffron folded in wax paper. You steep the thread in water and sip carefully. It's not much, but it smells like patience bitter honeyed, a little dusty. As you eat, Button begins his usual tune. A soft, sighing chirp. Not desperate, just steady, as if checking that the world still spins the way it should. The new cricket answers not with a matching song, but something fainter. A rising squeak, then a stutter, then silence again. Rivalry, uncertainty, or just two strangers learning each other's rhythm. The camp slowly stirs. Merchants pack their crates. Crates creak. A man nearby curses a goat who's stolen part of his tent. You help fold the sleeping mats, adjusting straps and checking knots. Your satchel is heavier now with 2 cages, and yet it feels lighter. Today, the caravan splits briefly. Some head west toward the lower routes. Others, including you, move toward the spice villages hidden in the valley basin. Places where turmeric dust hangs in the air, and every house has a rooftop covered in drying flowers. The path there winds through pine forests. The air changes. Cooler now, fresher. You breathe it in, and for a moment it doesn't smell like trade, or tents, or sweat. It smells like clean leaves and sap and beginnings. The road narrows, moss carpets the rocks, and everywhere, the soft, hollow song of water dripping from pine needles to stone. You pause on a low ridge and open Button's cage. He climbs lazily to the edge, antennae tasting the air. The light touches his wings. He chirps once louder than usual, then twice, faster, and from the other cage responds. A slow trill, uncertain at first, then a stronger one. Rising, a counterpoint. The forest holds the sound like a library, every chirp, echoing, bending, returning. You sit on a mossy boulder and just listen. For 5 minutes, then 10, then longer. 2 crickets, exchanging ideas, not arguing, not even performing, just being audible to each other. You reach into your pocket and pull out your small journal. You write today, Button made a friend. I think the forest approved. I wonder if there are trees that hum when no one's listening. You tuck the journal away and whisper something small into the air, not a prayer. Exactly, but a kind of promise to remember this moment. The moss, the drip. The drip. Eventually, the caravan calls. You pack up the cages, carefully, side by side. Neither cricket stirs much now. You suspect they've said what they needed to. The valley opens wide beneath you, and the scent of saffron fields returns dry, warm, sweet. You follow the winding trail downhill, a quiet line of footsteps and thoughts. Historians still argue whether crickets were kept for trade, for art, or for companionship. They cite purchase logs, spice manifests, poems scribbled in margins, bamboo carving techniques, and one infamous sketch of a man listening to a cricket with his ear pressed against a pumpkin. But they never mention what you know now. That 2 crickets, in a forest, can sing just to be heard, and that you, in hearing them, have changed just a little. By midday, the valley air thickens not uncomfortably, but like warm fabric, gently settling around your shoulders. The path is leveled out into a series of wide terraces that descend like giant green steps, each one peppered with clay houses, lines of drying laundry, and low stone walls that hum with lizards and the occasional chicken. This is Saffron country. You can smell it before you see it. The faintly bitter sweetness, like hay, honey, and candle smoke drifts on the breeze. And soon you spot them. Neat, rectangular fields, each one dotted with purple flowers. Not bright purple, not royal, but soft and sleepy. The shade of a dream right before you wake. You walk slowly through the first patch, careful not to step on the petals. Women in wide-brimmed hats crouch low, gently harvesting the saffron stigmas 3. Tiny red threads per flower. That's it. That's all you get. A girl no older than 7 offers you one. You thank her and hold the flower like a fragile spoon. When you sniff it, you don't get perfume, you get possibility. This is where the real trade happens, not in gold or silver, but in moments like these. A shared smile, a handed bloom, a bit of dirt on your boot from someone else's story. You stop at a hillside drying station, a flat wooden rack stacked with silk screens. There, saffron threads dry in the open air. Each screen is labeled with a handwritten tag. Harvest 3rd day. Light fog. Strong wind batch. Slight pine. Slept next to singing cage. You grinned at that last one. A woman tending the tray spots your smile. Crickets improve the drying, she says, completely serious. You nod. Of course they do. She leans in and adds, only if they sing before sunrise, though otherwise, they're just lazy. You keep walking, and in your satchel, Button stirs. His companion, the new one, still unnamed, chirps twice. Light, airy notes that feel perfectly timed. You suspect they've been listening to the saffron all morning. As the sun climbs, your caravan halts in the center of the village square. It's not really a square, more of a shared patch of stone and shade where people gather to trade, gossip, and nap. This is where the cricket exchange happens. There are no signs, no auctions, just a series of tiny stools, low tables, and merchants displaying cages like precious gems, bamboo, bone, carved soapstone. Some are silent. Some vibrate faintly with song, and each one has a price written, not in coin, but in equivalents. Half pouch saffron, if deep singer. 1 silk ribbon, prefers stormy air. 2 cloves in a poem. You find a vendor carefully tuning a cricket, using a leaf whistler rolled up almond leaf with a slit, through which he breathes gently. The cricket responds with slow clicks, like it's negotiating the rhythm. You watch, listen, wonder if you should try it. The man notices and offers the leaf. Yours might like this. You accept, unsure, blow softly. Button chirps once. Then again. The new cricket answers with a shorter trill, like punctuation. The vendor smiles. They know you. You don't trade anything today. You don't need to. You've brought your song with you. But you learn, and learning, here, is its own currency. Historians still argue how villages like these placed value on things that couldn't be weighed. They puzzle over barter lists, confused by entries like 1 cage, sun-dried heart-shaped, no singer. They dismiss the tags, the poetry, the leaf whistles as cultural fluff. But you know better. You sit down under a fig tree, unwrap some bread, and place both cricket cages beside you in the dappled light. They sing, not loudly, not competitively, just together. And as you eat, you write in your notebook. Maybe the crickets aren't taught to sing. Maybe we're just taught to listen. Later, you'll press the saffron flower the little girl gave you between 2 pages. You'll save it not because it's rare, but because it smelled like quiet. Evening creeps into the valley slowly. like ink into water. One moment you're swatting lazy flies away from your tea. The next you rewrapping a shawl over your shoulders because the breeze has turned whispery and cool. The saffron fields dim to violet shadows. The birds quiet. And somewhere behind a row of storage sheds, a small group of musicians begins tuning their lutes for the evening's slow, sleepy merchant supper. This is no formal banquet. There are no place settings, no announcements. Just rugs rolled out across the stone square, cushions scattered like fallen fruit, and plates passed hand to hand with no urgency. You sit between two older merchants. One smells like cloves and apricots. The other wears a pin shaped like a snail and introduces himself as Vimal, formerly of the loudest cricket in Tashkent, but now retired. You nod politely. Vimal opens a small tin and reveals an empty cricket cage, delicately carved from sandalwood. He passed last winter, he says, but I still bring the cage. It remembers his song. You glance at Button and his companion, both tucked beside your feet in their usual pouches. Vimal notices. They sing in the same rhythm, he says. You hadn't realized it, but now that he's pointed it out, you do hear it. Two alternating chirps, like a lullaby written in call and response. Not the same melody, but similar enough that you wonder, are they learning from each other? Or were they always meant to meet? The musicians begin to play, a low drone, then a slow melody like footsteps down a spiral staircase. Someone begins to sing a soft, ancient lullaby about a cricket who lived in a jar of honey and whispered bedtime stories to the moon. You sip saffron broth from a clay cup, the warmth grounding you. The smell reminds you of autumn, of paper, of something you can't name but know you've missed. Around the edges of the gathering, children spin in lazy circles. Some carry tiny cages, others carry nothing but ears open wide to the night. Then someone brings out the story drum. It's flat, circular, worn, smooth from years of tapping. Each beat corresponds to a tale. One slow beat, a true story. Two fast ones, a fable. Three soft taps. Your turn to make something up. The drum comes to you. You pause, then tap once. Vimal grins. You begin to speak, not loudly, not to impress, just to share. You tell the story of how you acquired Button, of the day he refused to sing until it rained, and how he chirped so loudly under a fig tree that a goat fainted from confusion. The group chuckles gently. Someone whispers, "That goat's still startled." You tap again, Weiss. This time, you offer a fable about a saffron flower that fell in love with a cricket, and how, each spring, she bloomed just long enough to hear his song again, and in return, he only chirped in that direction, no matter where he was carried. When you finish, no one claps. They just nod slowly, the way people do when they feel something settle quietly into the folds of their mind. Historians still debate whether these communal suppers were transactional or symbolic, whether they were for rest, bonding, or information trade, whether crickets actually participated or were just coincidental dinner music. But what history forgets is what can't be documented. The pause before a story, the glance toward a singing cage, the way silence can be shared like dessert. You lie back on the rug, full and still and tuned gently to the valley's frequency. Above you, the stars blink slowly awake. Button chirps once, then twice, then stops. You fall asleep before he starts again. You wake just before dawn, stirred by the hush that comes right before everything begins. The kind of silence that makes you hesitate to move, as if your breath might disturb the balance between night and morning. The square is nearly empty. A few sleeping shapes bundled in blankets. One camel chewing thoughtfully, the smell of embers and yesterday's bread. You sit up slowly and stretch, bones cracking like a polite drum roll. Then, With a kind of reverence, you reach for your satchel. Button's cage is cool to the touch. His companion's slightly warmer. Neither cricket is singing not yet, but both are awake. You can feel it in their stillness. You pull out your notebook and add a new entry. Pre-dawn, no chirping, just presence. Saffron dreams, or waiting for light. Your breath fogs faintly as you rise and make your way past shuttered stalls and quiet tools, heading toward the old bridge at the village edge. It is not a grand bridge, just a low arc of stone over a sleepy trickle of water, but it has excellent acoustics. You sit in the center of the bridge and place the 2 cricket cages on either side of you, like old friends seated at a picnic. You sip the last of your saffron tea, now cold and metallic, but comforting in its way, and then it happens. The first chirp. Not from Button, not from the newcomer, but from somewhere below the bridge, an unseen cricket, echoing from the rocks. A moment later, Button responds. Softly. Just one note, then silence. Then the newcomer answers. A longer note, tentative, curious. And then, from the shadows, a third chirp, not yours, not nearby. It's not a concert, it's a conversation. This, you realize, is why so many merchants brought crickets with them. Not for trade, not even for music, but for the reminder that there are still things in the world that listen before they answer. The sun edges up behind the hills. The crickets sing a little louder, then a little softer, then stop, as if to say, that was enough. You collect your cages gently, your fingers cold now, but careful. As you walk back into the waking village, the smell of warm grain and damp stone greets you. The tea shops are stirring. The spice vendors are stretching. Someone is sweeping yesterday's dust into tomorrow's corner. At breakfast, you sit beside Vimil again. He offers you a boiled egg. No explanation. You accept without asking. You took them to the bridge, he says, between bites. You nod. They chirped. They listened first. He grins. They always do. You glance at your notebook, now smudged with saffron and crumbs, and wonder how you'll describe this in writing. How to capture a sound that was mostly silence with intentions. Historians still puzzle over the bridge at the edge of this village. Some maps mark it as the listener's crossing. Others simply forget it. One travel diary describes it as good for foot traffic and philosophical bugs. But in your personal logbook, you label it the bridge where sound becomes space, where crickets remember things you haven't learned yet. The rest of the day passes in gentle motions, packing farewells, polite haggling over spice weights. You receive an offer for Button's companion to bundles of cinnamon and a pair of bone spoons, but decline. He hasn't fully sung his part yet. By afternoon, the caravan is on the road again. Dust rises behind you. The village fades, and in your satchel, your crickets sleep tired, perhaps from their morning dialogue, or simply thoughtful. The trail bends east. You follow it, grateful for sound, grateful for pauses, and especially grateful for mornings when the world teaches you something without saying a word. The road eastward isn't dramatic. It doesn't climb into mountains or dip into ravines. It simply meanders, the way old stories do, with no particular urgency. You walk it quietly, boots pressing into dry dust marked by centuries of other feet, hooves, wheels, paws. The sky is wide and unsentimental. The wind smells faintly of cumin and old cloth. Your caravan is quieter today. Perhaps it's the soft fatigue of travel. Or perhaps everyone is still hearing the echoes of last night's cricket corral on the bridge. You walk near the front, between a woman who sells polished gourds and a boy who travels with a goat that wears bells for reasons known only to them. In your satchel, both cricket cages sway gently with each step. You check on them Button is perched high in his cage, still as a statue, antennae waving like tiny weather vanes. His companion, who really does need a name, is burrowed into the folds of his moss bedding. No visible signs of wakefulness, though you suspect he's listening to every word the goat's bells are muttering. You decide to call him Chime. It suits the way he waits. The day pauses in rhythms, walking, pausing, adjusting straps, sharing dried figs. A merchant offers you a walnut carved with the phrase, "Let stillness speak first." You buy it for 2 clove pods and hang it from your belt. By afternoon, you reach a small rock plateau where travelers often stop for trade and tea. There's no settlement. Here just a collection of smooth boulders, flat enough to sit on and surrounded by low stone walls, shaped by centuries of wind. The locals call it the listening place. Why? Because of the echo. Even the smallest chirp here returns twice, once loudly, then again, faint and delayed, like memory. You sit and take out the cages. Chime chirps once, then silent. 3 seconds later, the sound comes back, fainter, higher, like a ghost's response. Button chirps. Then again, the crickets are talking to themselves. Or maybe to the space. Or maybe to you. Another merchant joins you. She carries a small harp strung with silk threads and plays a slow scale. The notes drift into the rocks and return half-whispered. You nod to her. She nods back. No words are needed. You take out your notebook and sketch a diagram. Sound enters, waits, comes home, softer. Echo is just a spiral in disguise. That night, the caravan camps under the open sky. No tents, just bedrolls, blankets, and caged crickets arranged in a circle, like night lights that hum instead of glow. Vimal is there again? Of course. He carries no crickets now, just stories. Tonight he tells one about the Emperor of Pish, who ordered every meal to be announced by cricket chirp, claiming it improved digestion. Did it work? Someone asks. No idea, Vimal says. But he lived to 92, and so did the cricket. Laughter floats into the night, low and lazy. Someone passes around a jar of preserved lemons. You nibble one and taste time. Chime sings a goonfur soft, then longer, then a single high note like a question mark. Button answers with 3 steady notes. You realize, suddenly, that they've formed a pattern. Not a song, exactly, but a habit of sound. They sing only when the camp quiets, only when the stars are watching. Historians still argue about these plateaus, whether they were used for ceremonies, secret meetings, or simply convenient tea breaks. No one mentions the echoes. No one records the music of bugs in ledgers or trade manifests. But if you write it down and you do, it becomes part of the story. Echoes are proof that sound likes to be remembered. Crickets know that. So do I. You fall asleep with your satchel close. The cage is warm from your body heat, the walnut charm tapping against your hip with each slow breath. Button sings once more. Chime answers. Then the rocks reply. By the time you reach the next city, it feels like a dream you stepped into slowly. The road stops being dust and turns into cobbled stone, uneven and warm underfoot. The hills flatten. Palm trees appear, not in groves, but as solitary guardians outside courtyards. The air smells of turmeric smoke and faintly of something roasted. This is Kotonor, as it's sometimes called in the journals of other merchants, the city of whispering goods. It earns the name not from spies or secrets, but because the markets never shout. You step through the outer gate into a marketplace that hums with gentle bartering. Slow voices, thoughtful pauses, the soft rustle of fabrics being lifted, weighed, folded again. It's like wandering into a room where everyone is already halfway asleep and completely okay with that. Your satchel is heavier today. Button, chime, a fresh pouch of ginger flakes from a kind stranger, and 3 new saffron threads, slightly curled and still sticky from dew. You're not here to sell, just to see. The first stall you pause at is run by a man with 5 identical cages, each housing a nearly invisible cricket. He gestures to you to listen, not speak. You lean in. Each cricket chirps in a slightly different tempo, like a row of clocks, but softer, less mechanical. He calls them his timekeepers, points at one, holds up 5 fingers. Dawn, he whispers. Points to another, 2 fingers. Late tea, points to a third, shrugs, thinks it's a nightingale. You laugh. Offer him a trade, 1 line of a poem in exchange for one of his cricket cages. He nods. You take your notebook and write. Chirping is the clock of those who rest often. He reads it, taps his heart, then hands you a cage, a thin latticed, octagonal one made of rosewood. Inside is a cricket the color of dried tea. It blinks at you once. You name him Interval. You don't know why. It just fits. You wrap the cage in your scarf and move on. The city market stretches for blocks. A lazy sprawl of spices, wax tablets, bundles of dyed wool, tiny mirrors, cracked copper pans, medicinal seeds in Tide packets, and scrolls written in at least 3 scripts. And in between all these, the crickets. Always quiet. Always carefully watched. One woman lets you try her scented cricket cages, each rubbed with saffron oil and cinnamon bark until even the insects inside seem vaguely fragrant. Another offers cricket food, melon bits soaked in rose water, and something called evening hush powder, which might be sugar or finely crushed dreams. You buy a small jar, just in case. You find a shady alcove to rest in. 3 cages now. Button, chime, interval. You line them up, open their windows, let the breeze pass through. Silence, long trill. You tilt your head. The crickets are no longer replying to each other. They're harmonizing. 3 voices intertwined, overlapping, unconcerned with rhythm or perfection. It's not a song, exactly. It's a presence. A kind of background breathing, tuned to the pace of silk being unrolled, to the sound of rice being poured into clay jars. It's music for a market that never hurries. You write some cities hum in stone, others hum in wings. Evening falls in golden layers. A child walks past you with a cricket cage painted in indigo swirls. Another sits in a basket, eyes closed, her cage perched beside her like a talisman. No one here treats their crickets like toys. They are companions, listeners, and occasionally judges of silence. Historians still argue whether these cricket-rich cities exaggerated their claims, whether crickets truly affected trade values, marriage proposals, or even market taxes, as some scrolls suggest. One scroll simply reads, Saffron went up 3 chirps this week. Most scholars assume that was metaphor, but you've seen how a well-timed chirp can change a deal. Lighten a face, quiet a crowd. You gather your satchel, careful with your 3 cages. As you leave the market, someone hands you a tiny scroll wrapped in silk thread. No words, just a sketch of a cricket sitting on a spice scale, balanced perfectly. You tuck it into your pocket and smile, because really, what else is there to say? The next morning, you leave Khotan just before sunrise. The sky is the color of soaked parchment, and the city behind you exhales smoke from 1,000 small cooking fires, boiled eggs, and a tea made from something that smells like dried mangoes. And laundry soap, oddly comforting. You're not alone. The caravan is reassembled, refreshed, and lightly reconfigured. Some traders have stayed behind to sell bread. Others joined your ranks with bundles of indigo cloth, polished gourd flasks, and small, delicate packages labeled only with a stamped cricket symbol. You don't ask. You've learned that. Sometimes, questions just get in the way of listening. The road out is gentler than you remember. It curves through almond groves, low walls of clay and woven twigs lining the path. You walk quietly, 3 cages nestled like sleepy passengers in your satchel, button, chime, and interval. You pause at a fork in the road, where a small shrine sits beneath a poplar tree. It's simple. A stack of stones, a shallow bowl filled with saffron threads, and a single cricket cage empty, its door swung open like a breath. There's a wooden tag nailed beside it, faded but legible. Leave something you don't want to forget. You think for a long moment, then untie the walnut charm from your belt. You place it gently inside the cage, then close the door behind it. A trade not of value, but of memory. You write in your notebook. Reminder. Not everything carried needs to be kept. Some things sing louder when left behind. The path narrows again, leading through reeds and small creeks. Crickets in the grass chirp sporadically, wild ones, with untrained rhythms and untamed songs. Button doesn't answer. Chime rustles, but stays quiet. Interval, however, sings a slow trill that drifts out and blends into the wild chorus. Indistinguishable by the 3rd repetition. You grin. He's trying to belong. You stop in the late afternoon at a place called the Sitting Garden. Not because it's an actual garden, and not because people are required to sit, but because everyone who arrives does. Low walls ring a field of small shrubs and wildflowers. In the center, a flat, sun-warmed stone wide enough for 20 people to rest on if they agree not to stretch too much. There are no markets, no sellers, just a shelf tucked into the rock wall, labeled Library of Chirps. Take one, leave one. You open the shelf. Inside, dozens of tiny scrolls, each one wrapped with thread or twine, each marked with a cricket-shaped wax seal in various colors: red, blue, yellow, charcoal. Inside, a poem written in near-illegible looping script. He sang only when the sky was blue, so we waited out the clouds. You leave a note of your own, folded carefully. 3 chirps walked into the wind. 1 returned, the other 2 stayed. You choose a new scroll, this one sealed with green wax and tied with saffron dyed twine. Slide it into your satchel. Button chirps softly as you do. A few other travelers join you on the stone. Some nap, some write. One woman gently oils her cricket cage while humming a lullaby that seems made entirely of vowels. No one speaks. Only the breeze and the bugs. Historians rarely mention the Sitting Garden. It appears in one footnote as an informal rest stop and in another as possibly invented by travelers to romanticize downtime. But those who've been know better. The garden isn't about rest. It's about recording what crickets already know. As the sun dips, the shelf is full again. You pass it one last time and run your fingers across the top scroll. Not to tick, just to feel the texture of the wax. You whisper, "Sing me something later." No one hears, except maybe Button. Back on the trail, the stars arrive early, eager to watch the road unfold. Your satchel is heavier with scrolls now, lighter with the absence of charms. Your crickets hum, softly, in their own ways, in their own time. And you, in the middle of it all, are learning to hear things the wind didn't mean to say. The next day, the caravan follows an older rota path not used much anymore, according to the camel handlers. It's cracked, lopsided, overtaken in places by shrubs and wind-blown reeds. But it leads to an old caravanserai, and that's reason enough to follow it. The air is cooler here, drier, with hints of cedar smoke and salt. You breathe deeply, Even the crickets seem subdued, their cages rocking gently with each step, silent as monks in procession. By midday, you see it, a square compound of sun-bleached stone, its arches sagging just slightly, like a building exhaling. The walls are covered in handprints, faded red and ochre, left by travelers over generations. One corner features a mural half-yearist of a merchant, offering a cricket cage to a child who carries a bowl of saffron threads. You smile. At least some artist once understood this journey. Inside the courtyard, it's quiet. The dust is soft, the fountain dry, but there are signs of recent visits. Footprints, a discarded fig stem, a faint scorch mark where someone made tea not long ago. You find a shaded alcove near the edge of the courtyard and settle in. It smells like old rope and lavender. You remove the cages from your satchel, one by one. Button first, then chime, then interval. You set them on a low stone ledge, open their windows, and watch. Nothing. And then chime sings one short note. Then again, pause. Button responds, but only with a twitch. Interval lifts one leg, stretches a wing, but stays silent. Perhaps they're waiting for the echo. Or perhaps they're just thinking. You pull out your notebook and begin transcribing what you hear. Courtyard, noon, chime, 2 notes. Interval, dreamt of wind, possibly. You draw little spirals next to their names, then arrows, then spirals again. A shadow falls across your notes. It's an elderly woman, leather-skinned, with a silk scarf patterned like cricket wings. She carries a wide dish filled with shallow sand and offers it silently. You nod and watch as she places the dish beside the cages. Then she unrolls a small cloth inside, 3 crickets of her own, each marked with a colored thread tied loosely around one hind leg. She sets them carefully in the dish. They begin to sing, high-low. One sings in 3s, another in strange syncopation. You've never heard rhythms like this. Button, chime, and interval respond not instantly, but slowly, as if processing the music like a second language. It becomes clear. This is a conversation, not a performance. No one claps, no one talks. You and the woman simply sit together for nearly an hour, listening as the 6 crickets exchange their insect philosophies. When it's over, she nods once and wraps up her own companions. You offer her one of your saffron scrolls, the one from the listening garden. She reads it, lips moving slightly, then places it gently inside her pouch, as if it were a talisman. She never speaks, and then she is gone. You remain. The sun is beginning to tilt, casting long shadows across the stone. You eat a small meal, figs, dried cheese, a square of lemon saffron biscuitonde, refill your tea flask from a trickle of water at the fountain base. As the evening chill arrives, this time, the cages feel heavier. Not from weight, from meaning. Historians still dispute whether the caravanserais were ever really places of knowledge exchange or just glorified rest stops. But you have listened to 6 crickets hold court in a broken courtyard, while the past looked on from painted stone. You walk out beneath a slowly violet sky, the gate creaking behind you. Button chirps, chime follows. Interval hums one long note that fades into wind. And for a moment, the road ahead feels less like a line and more like a spiral that knows its way home. The following morning arrives with a thin fog, a pale hush that settles over the road like gauze. Dew clings to your sleeves, and your boots leave wet impressions on the packed earth as you walk. The caravan is quiet again, but not from sleep. It's a listening quiet, the kind that hangs in the air when everyone senses the journey has begun to mean something. You pass through the outskirts of a village too small to name, where fences are made of broomsticks and vines, and every doorstep has a ceramic bowl of water with a flower floating inside. You pause to admire one with a single saffron thread twirling lazily in a puddle of yellow dye. Someone, clearly, has taste. The shopkeeper nods to you without speaking. You nod back and continue on. The road here curls gently through apricot groves, where the fruit hangs low and bruised, sweetening in the sun. Children chase each other between the trees, their laughter skipping along the dirt like thrown stones. And then you hear it. A whistle. Sharp, but not unkind. A call, perhaps. You follow the sound and find an old man sitting on a stone with a flat wooden box on his lap. The box is full of wooden discs each, no bigger than a coin painted with abstract symbols. He looks up. Ever play cricket, Fortune? You blink. He gestures to the box. 1 chirp per disc. You pull 3. Listen. The crickets answer. That's your luck. You hesitate, then sit. He offers the box. You pull 3 discs at random and place them on the ground. A spiral, a feather, and something that might be a basket. He nods as if this confirms something he already knew. You place button, chime, and interval in a loose triangle around the discs. They wait. You wait. The old man begins tapping his walking stick softly on the ground. Toke, toke. A pause, then button chirps. Once, sharp. The man grunts. Spiral agrees. Another pause, then chime to trills long languid. Feather says, be patient. Then, interval nothing. The old man leans in. He's thinking. A full minute passes, then chirp. Short, precise. Basket says, carry less. You sit back and blink at the discs. Does it mean anything? You ask. The old man shrugs. They always mean something, especially if you don't know what. You laugh. He offers you a pouch of dried peach slices in exchange for a poem. You write. 3 songs danced around a question. The answer slept inside the quietest wing. He reads it, pockets it, and waves you off with a smile. Back on the road, the trees thin into tall grassland, gold and rustling. The wind picks up. It makes the cages swing slightly as they hang from your shoulder strap, soft clinks of bamboo and rosewood. The road is empty except for a faded stone marker with a carved image of a cricket seated atop a balance scale. You chuckle. Must be a sign. And it is. You stop to rest near a stream. The water is slow, full of round stones and tiny fish that dart away from shadows. You open the cages, letting the crickets feel the sun. You place the 3 discs on the grass beside them. Spiral, feather, basket. This time, no fortune needed, just presence. Historians rarely reference these side encounters. They leave out the wooden discs, the peach trades, the rituals born of habit rather than doctrine. They note currency, volume of spice, loss of goods. But they forget that sometimes the most meaningful exchanges weigh nothing at all. The caravan catches up with you around dusk. Someone hands you a sweet made of honey and black sesame. Another offers you a riddle about goats and carts that you can answer and don tea and tend to. You fall into step between 2 traders with violin-shaped bundles instruments, possibly both. And as the sun sinks, you hear it again. Chirp, pause, chirp, chirp, spiral, feather, basket. You keep walking. You keep listening.